The 12 kids from Earth couldn't stop staring at the massive alien ship floating above their school. It looked like a giant silver whale swooning in the sky, its metallic skin shining under the morning sun. They had won the biggest science competition in the galaxy, beating thousands of other young species with their simple but clever project about using Earth's bacteria to clean up space junk. Tom kept bouncing on his feet, unable to stay still as he watched the ship's landing lights flicker in patterns he'd never seen before. Next to him, Ruby checked her backpack for the 10th time, making sure she had packed her notebook and her lucky pen. Jack, the tallest of the group, was already trying to guess how fast he could run in the ship's artificial gravity. Their teacher, Mr. Brown, gathered them all together. Remember, kids, this is the first time the Galactic Science Academy has allowed human children on their research vessel. We need to show them that Earth kids can be well behaved. He looked directly at Jack when he said the last part, knowing very well about the boy's love for climbing things he shouldn't. The alien ship lowered a smooth, glowing ramp. Two tall figures walked down slowly, their movements careful and deliberate in Earth's gravity. The aliens had blue-tinted skin that seemed to shimmer like morning dew, and their long necks made them look like curious giraffes dressed in silver uniforms. "Welcome, young humans," the taller alien spoke through a translator device hanging from their neck. "I am First Observer Blue, and this is Science Officer Green. We are honored to host the first human children aboard the Stellar Seeker." Tom raised his hand so fast he almost hit Ruby in the face. "First Observer, is it true that your ship can travel through fold space? And does it really have a quantum computer that can think in 11 dimensions?" The alien's large eyes blinked slowly, surprised by the complex question from such a small being. "Yes, young one. Though I'm surprised you know about such advanced concepts." "Oh, we learned about it while making our project." Tom smiled wide, showing off the gap where his front tooth was growing back. "Ruby figured out how to use quantum mechanics to make the bacteria work better." The second alien, Science Officer Green, made a surprised chirping sound. "These are children. We were told they were beginners in galactic science." Mr. Brown tried not to smile too proudly. "On Earth, we believe in teaching complex ideas early. You'd be surprised what kids can understand when you explain it the right way." The aliens led the group up the ramp, their movements still awkward in Earth's gravity. The kids, on the other hand, walked easily, their bodies naturally adjusted to the planet's strong pull. Inside the ship, the entrance hall was huge, with ceilings that seemed to reach forever and walls that changed color like soap bubbles in the sun. "Please be careful," First Observer Blue warned. "Your species' higher bone density and muscle mass mean you're much stronger than you appear. Many things on this ship are very delicate." Jack, who had been eyeing a floating platform nearby, tried to look innocent. "We'll be super careful, promise." Ruby elbowed him, knowing the tone in his voice meant he was already planning something fun and probably against the rules. As they moved deeper into the ship, more alien crew members appeared, watching the human children with a mix of curiosity and worry. Some whispered among themselves, using words like Deathworlders and high-gravity species when they thought the kids couldn't hear. Tom noticed everything, his eyes wide as he tried to memorize all the amazing technology around them. Ruby kept making quick notes in her book, drawing rough sketches of things she found interesting. Jack was surprisingly well-behaved, though he couldn't help testing his strength against the artificial gravity, taking slightly bigger steps than necessary. "This will be a 3-hour tour," Science Officer Green explained, leading them toward a huge room filled with holographic displays. "We will show you our main research laboratories, the bridge, and—" A small alarm suddenly beeped on the officer's wrist device. The alien looked at it with all 4 eyes, making a concerned humming sound. "Is everything okay?" Mr. Brown asked, noticing the change in the alien's behavior. "Oh, yes, just a routine system check," First Observer Blue said quickly, maybe too quickly. "Nothing to worry about. Now let me show you our quantum physics lab." I believe young Tom will find it particularly interesting. As they walked toward the lab, Ruby noticed something odd about the color-changing walls. The pattern seemed different now, less smooth somehow. She nudged Tom and pointed it out. He nodded, also seeing that something wasn't quite right. But both kids stayed quiet, not wanting to cause trouble on their big day. Little did they know, their adventure was just beginning. The quantum physics lab was filled with floating holograms that sparkled like soap bubbles in sunlight. Tom was about to ask another question when the ship made a sound that reminded everyone of a sick whale. The lights flickered once, twice, and then the floating holograms collapsed into nothing. "That's not supposed to happen," Science Officer Green said, all four eyes blinking rapidly. The alien's blue skin had turned a pale shade, almost white with worry. First Observer Blue touched several spots on the wall, but nothing happened. "The main computer isn't responding. This is impossible. Our systems have 12 layers of backup." The ship groaned again, and suddenly everyone felt lighter. Ruby grabbed onto a nearby table as her feet started to lift off the floor. "The gravity's going weird," she called out, watching as Mr. Brown and several alien crew members started floating upward. But Tom, Jack, and the other Earth kids didn't panic. Instead, they seemed almost excited. Back home, they had all played in the anti-gravity chambers at the Space Museum. This was just like that, only with more scared aliens floating around. "Everyone stay calm." First Observer Blue tried to sound in control while awkwardly swimming through the air. "The emergency systems will activate any moment now." Jack pushed off the floor with his strong legs, gliding smoothly to catch a floating data tablet before it could hit the ceiling. "Here you go," he said, pushing it back to Science Officer Green. "This is kind of fun." More alarms started ringing throughout the ship. The alien crew members who came floating into the lab looked terrified. Their movements were clumsy and panicked, nothing like their usual graceful way of moving. "The main engine core is shutting down," one of them reported, voice shaking. "Life support systems are switching to emergency power, and we're detecting micro cracks in the quantum containment field." Ruby's eyes got big. She might not understand all the fancy words, but she knew that anything with quantum in its name shouldn't have cracks in it. She looked at Tom, who was already floating near one of the control panels, studying its symbols with intense focus. "These patterns," he said, pointing at the swirling alien text, "they're like the ones we used in our bacteria project. Look, Ruby, it's using the same kind of quantum math." Ruby pushed herself through the air to join him, her movement much smoother than the panicking aliens around them. She pulled out her notebook, which was now floating like a lazy butterfly. "You're right. The energy flow is all wrong. It's going in circles instead of spirals." The alien crew stared at the Earth children in surprise. Here they were discussing complex quantum mechanics while floating in zero gravity, as if it was just another day at school. Suddenly, the gravity came back, but it came back wrong. Everyone slammed down onto the floor, but the Earth kids landed on their feet like cats, their bodies automatically adjusting to the heavy pull. They had grown up on a planet with much stronger gravity, after all. The aliens, however, crumpled under the increased gravity. Their tall, elegant bodies weren't made for such crushing force. First Observer Blue could barely lift their head to speak. "Emergency, shutdown, initiated, but the controls aren't responding." Jack helped Science Officer Green sit up against a wall. "Hey, don't worry. We're good at fixing things. On Earth, stuff breaks all the time, and we have to figure it out ourselves." Mr. Brown, who was also struggling with the heavy gravity, managed to smile proudly at his students. They were handling the crisis better than anyone could have expected. Tom and Ruby were already working together, comparing the ship's quantum formulas to their notes from the bacteria project. The other Earth kids spread out to help the fallen alien crew members, their stronger bodies easily handling the increased gravity. First Observer, Ruby called out, her voice excited despite the danger. We think we know what's wrong. The quantum field is trying to fix itself the wrong way, just like our bacteria did at first. We had to teach them to work together instead of fighting each other. Before the alien could respond, another alarm started blaring. This one louder and more urgent than all the others. The walls of the ship began to shimmer with strange dark patterns that definitely weren't supposed to be there. Something was very wrong with the ship's brain, and time was running out to fix it. But while the alien crew was struggling just to move, 12 Earth kids were ready to tackle the problem head-on. After all, solving impossible problems was what got them here in the first place. A hissing sound filled the air as the ship's ventilation system sputtered and coughed. Strange mist began pouring from the air vents, mixing Earth-normal air with the alien atmosphere. The alien crew's eyes went wide with terror. The atmospheric processors are failing. Science Officer Green gasped out, still pinned down by the heavy gravity. The mix will be toxic to everyone. But something strange happened, or rather, didn't happen. While the alien crew members started coughing and wheezing, the Earth children seemed perfectly fine. Tom took a deep breath and shrugged. "It's kind of like that time we went hiking in the mountains," he said. "Remember, Ruby, when the air got really thin?" Ruby nodded while helping an alien crew member sit up. "Yeah, or like when we went swooning really deep in the pool. Our lungs are good at handling weird air." Mr. Brown, who was looking a bit uncomfortable, but nowhere near as bad as the aliens, managed to explain. "Earth children grow up breathing all sorts of air. Our atmosphere changes all the time. By the ocean, in the mountains, in cities. Their bodies learn to adapt from a very young age." First Observer Blue stared at the children in amazement. "Your species considers this normal, to have varying atmospheric conditions. Earth's pretty crazy that way," Jack said with a grin. He was bouncing on his toes, testing the heavy gravity. "Mom says that's why humans are so good at surviving. We get used to stuff changing all the time." The ship groaned again, and more warning lights started flashing. The dark patterns on the walls were spreading like spilled ink, and strange crackling sounds came from behind the panels. "The quantum field is destabilizing faster," Ruby said, looking at her notes. "Tom, remember how our bacteria started eating each other when they got scared? I think the ship's quantum particles are doing the same thing." Tom nodded excitedly. "They're panicking, just like our bacteria did before we taught them to work together." He turned to First Observer Blue. "Can you show us how to talk to the ship's quantum brain? We might be able to help." The alien leader looked unsure. "The quantum interface is highly complex and dangerous. The radiation levels near the core air." "Oh, radiation's not that bad," one of the other Earth kids spoke up. "We get sun radiation all the time on Earth. My dad says we're like super tough because of it." The alien crew exchanged shocked looks. What kind of horrible Deathworld produced children who talked about radiation exposure so casually? More mist poured into the room, making the air thicker and stranger. The alien crew members were having more and more trouble breathing, but the Earth kids were adapting quickly. Their bodies, used to Earth's constantly changing conditions, were automatically adjusting to the new atmosphere. "We have to do something," Ruby said firmly, pulling out her lucky pen. "The ship's getting sicker, just like our bacteria did. And we fixed them." First Observer Blue looked at the children's determined faces, then at their struggling crew. They had no choice. These Deathworld children, with their naturally tough bodies and strange resistance to radiation, might be their only hope. "Very well," the alien leader said. "Science Officer Green will show you how to access the quantum interface. But please be careful. Your species may be surprisingly durable, but you're still children." Tom and Ruby rushed to the control panel where Science Officer Green was showing them how to read the quantum data. The other Earth kids spread out to help the alien crew members, sharing tips about breathing in thin air that they'd learned from sports and high-altitude camping. Jack, meanwhile, was studying the dark patterns spreading across the walls. Hey, this looks like that mold problem we had in the school basement. Remember how we fixed that? Maybe we could. Before he could finish, all the lights suddenly went out. In the darkness, the ship's walls glowed with swirling patterns of sickly green and purple. The quantum field was breaking down faster than anyone had expected. But in the dim, strange light, 12 pairs of Earthchild eyes shone with determination. Their bodies, toughened by life on a world that never stopped trying to kill them, were ready for whatever came next. And their minds, taught from birth to adapt and survive, were already racing with ideas. They had saved their bacteria project when everyone said it was impossible. Now they just had to do the same thing again, but with a quantum-powered starship instead of microscopic life forms. No pressure, right? In the eerie glow of the failing quantum field, Tom stared at the swirling patterns of alien numbers on the screen. They reminded him of the strategy games he played at home, where you had to match patterns to win. Ruby stood next to him, her notebook floating in the strange, wavering gravity as she quickly wrote down everything they saw. The ship's lost in space. First Observer Blue announced, their voice weak in the thinning air. Navigation systems are completely down. We're drifting. But instead of panicking, Tom's eyes lit up. Ruby, look. The numbers are playing against each other, just like in Battle Quest. Remember how we had to make the enemy teams work together in level 12? Ruby's eyes widened. You're right. And look at these energy patterns. They're fighting just like our bacteria did before we fixed them. She turned to Science Officer Green. Can we try something? It might sound weird, but weird ideas sometimes work best. The alien officer, still struggling with the heavy gravity and strange air, could only nod. What did they have to lose? In our bacteria project, Tom explained, his hands moving excitedly, we found out that fighting made everything worse, so we taught them to play together instead. Jack, who had been helping other alien crew members stay comfortable, jumped in. Like in soccer, when everyone tries to be the star player, the team loses. But when we work together, we win. First Observer Blue blinked all 4 eyes in confusion. You want to teach our quantum computer to play games? Not exactly, Ruby said, already typing on the floating control panel. We want to teach it to stop fighting itself. Look, each quantum bit is trying to fix the problem its own way, but they need to work as a team. The other Earth kids gathered around, watching as Tom and Ruby worked. This was just like the time they all worked together to fix the school's computer system after a power surge. Sure, this was a super advanced alien quantum computer, but problems were problems, no matter how fancy they looked. Here, Tom said, pointing to a particular pattern. If we change this sequence, it's like giving the quantum bits a common goal instead of letting them fight each other. Ruby nodded, making quick calculations in her notebook. And if we reverse the energy flow here and here, it's like giving them a timeout to calm down. The alien crew watched in amazement as these small humans confidently worked with their most advanced technology. The children talked about quantum mechanics like it was a playground game, seeing simple solutions where the aliens saw only complexity. Suddenly, the ship shuddered. The dark patterns on the walls swirled faster, and for a moment, everything went completely dark. Then, slowly, tiny points of light began appearing on the walls, like stars coming out at night. The quantum field is stabilizing, Science Officer Green said in disbelief, checking their readings. How did you? We made them play nice, Tom said proudly. See, when all the quantum bits work together, they're like a team instead of a bunch of players running around crazy. The gravity slowly began to normalize, and some of the emergency lights flickered back on. The alien crew members started breathing easier as the atmospheric mix began to improve. But they weren't out of danger yet. Navigation is still offline, First Observer Blue reported. We're lost in space with no way to calculate our position. But Jack was grinning. Lost in space, that's like the best game ever. Tom, remember that time we got lost in the woods at summer camp? Tom nodded excitedly. Yeah, we found our way back by looking at the sun and the stars and stuff. Ruby, can we see the stars from here? Ruby was already working on the control panel. If we can get the outside cameras working, we can try to match the star patterns. It's just like a giant connect-the-dots puzzle. The alien crew watched in stunned silence as the Earth children approached their crisis like it was just another fun challenge to solve. These young humans, with their simple games and basic problem-solving skills, were finding ways around problems that had stumped the most advanced AI in the galaxy. But they weren't done yet. The ship might be more stable, but they were still lost in the vast darkness of space. And somewhere in the depths of the ship, something was making an ominous rumbling sound that nobody liked at all. The deep rumbling sound from below grew louder, making the floor vibrate beneath their feet. First Observer Blue pressed their hand against a wall panel, feeling the vibrations. The main engine core, they said, voice filled with worry. Something's wrong in the maintenance tunnels. We need to check the cooling systems. But they looked at their tall, thin body, then at the small maintenance tunnel entrance nearby. Jack walked over to the tunnel entrance and peered inside. These tunnels are tiny. No wonder you can't fit. He looked back at his classmates with a grin. But we can. We go through smaller spaces in the playground obstacle course all the time. The alien crew exchanged nervous looks. The tunnels are dangerous, Science Officer Green warned. The gravity is unstable down there, and the radiation levels. We can handle it, Ruby said confidently. We're small enough to fit, and Earth's gravity made us strong. Plus, we're good at climbing and crawling around. Tom nodded eagerly. Yeah, remember the cave exploration we did on our camping trip? This looks way easier than that. And we've got our games to help us understand the ship's systems now. Mr. Brown stepped forward, looking concerned. Kids, this isn't a game. Those tunnels could be really dangerous. But we're the only ones who can do it, Jack pointed out. The aliens are too big, and they're having trouble with the gravity. We're built for this kind of stuff. First Observer Blue studied the Earth children thoughtfully. These young humans had already proven themselves smarter and tougher than anyone expected. Their small size, combined with their natural strength from growing up on a high-gravity world, made them perfectly suited for navigating the maintenance tunnels. He's right, the alien leader finally said. We have no choice, but we'll guide you through the comm system, and you must be extremely careful. Jack, Tom, and Ruby volunteered to go first, while the other Earth kids stayed behind to help monitor the ship's systems. The three friends gathered near the tunnel entrance, checking their pockets for tools, and making sure their clothes wouldn't get caught on anything. The cooling system controls should be 3 junctions down, Science Officer Green explained, showing them a holographic map. But be careful. The artificial gravity might change suddenly, and there are hot spots. Like that time we played laser tag in the zero-gravity chamber, Jack said excitedly. Don't worry, we know how to move around when gravity goes weird. The 3 kids crawled into the tunnel, their bodies easily fitting through spaces that would have been impossibly tight for the tall, thin aliens. The tunnel was lit by the same strange, swirling patterns that covered the ship's walls, but the children weren't scared. After all, they had flashlights on their phones, and they'd explored plenty of dark places before. As they crawled deeper into the maintenance system, the gravity started shifting. Sometimes they felt heavy, sometimes light as feathers, but their Earth-born bodies, used to dealing with changing conditions, adapted quickly. They moved like they were born for this, pushing and pulling themselves along with practiced ease. It's getting hot, Ruby reported through the comm system. But it's not as bad as that time we helped clean the school's boiler room. They reached the first junction, where 3 tunnels met in a small chamber. Tom studied the alien markings on the walls, matching them to the patterns they'd seen in the ship's quantum computer. This way, he pointed. The patterns show more energy flowing down that tunnel. That must be where the cooling systems are. Just then, The ship shuddered violently. The gravity reversed suddenly, but the kids were ready. They grabbed the handholds on the tunnel walls, their stronger muscles easily supporting their weight. "How are you doing that?" First Observer Blue's voice came through the comm, amazed. "Our maintenance robots usually shut down when the gravity shifts that fast. We climb stuff all the time," Jack explained, already moving forward despite being upside down. "Monkey bars, rock walls, trees. This is just like a really cool jungle gym." They continued deeper into the ship's maintenance system, using their Earth-trained strength and agility to overcome every challenge. Where alien robots and crew members couldn't go, 3 kids from a high-gravity Deathworld moved with confident ease. But as they got closer to the engine core, the rumbling grew louder, and the air got hotter. Whatever was wrong with the cooling system, they were about to find out. And somehow, they'd have to fix it before the whole ship overheated. The maintenance tunnel ended at a round chamber filled with glowing pipes. Steam hissed from dozens of tiny cracks, and the air was so hot it made the children's eyes water. But they didn't turn back. "We found the cooling system," Tom reported through the comm. "It looks like a giant radiator, but all sparkly." Science Officer Green's voice crackled through their communicators. "The quantum core is overheating. If we don't restore cooling in the next 10 minutes, the reactor will blow up," Jack guessed. "Like in the movies. More like tear a hole in space-time," Ruby corrected, already studying the pipes. "But don't worry. This is just like fixing the big freezer at my dad's restaurant. When it broke down last summer, we had to." A loud crack interrupted her. One of the main cooling pipes split open, spraying hot steam into the chamber. The alien crew gasped through the comm system, but the Earth kids barely flinched. "This is nothing," Jack said, wiping sweat from his forehead. "Remember that heat wave last year, when it was so hot the roads melted? This is way easier than playing soccer in that." Tom nodded, already moving toward the control panel. "The heat's not too bad. Kind of like that time we helped the firefighters with their training day." The alien crew listened in amazement as these young humans casually discussed conditions that would kill most species. The children's bodies, evolved to handle Earth's extreme temperature swings, were letting them work in an environment that would have already knocked out most adult aliens. "Look at these power readings," Ruby said, pointing to the swirling numbers on the control panel. "The quantum core is fighting the cooling system, just like it was fighting itself before. We need to make them work together." Tom studied the patterns. "It's like 2 teams playing against each other again. But this time, it's more like when we had to balance hot and cold water in the school science fair project. The quantum core's temperature is reaching critical levels," First Observer Blue warned through the comm. "You need to get out of there. The radiation." "It's okay," Ruby assured them, her fingers flying over the control panel. "Earth has lots of radiation. That's why we're so tough. Tom, help me with these patterns. Jack, can you reach that valve up there?" Jack was already climbing the pipes like they were tree branches, his Earth-strong muscles easily supporting him even in the shifting gravity. "Got it. Tell me when." Tom and Ruby worked together, using what they'd learned about the ship's quantum systems. Instead of fighting the core's energy, they were trying to guide it, like helping a friend learn a new game. "Now, Jack," Ruby called. Jack turned the valve right as Tom and Ruby activated their new cooling sequence. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the chamber filled with a high-pitched whine as energy surged through the systems. "It's working," Tom shouted excitedly. "The quantum core is starting to cool down. Ruby, look at these patterns. They're dancing together now." The alien crew watched their monitors in disbelief as temperature readings began to drop. These children, using nothing but simple Earth logic and their naturally tough bodies, were solving a crisis that had stumped the most advanced cooling systems in the galaxy. But they weren't safe yet. Just as the core temperature started to stabilize, another pipe burst. Hot quantum plasma sprayed across the chamber, filling the air with glowing mist. "Get out of there immediately," First Observer Blue commanded. "The radiation levels are beyond safe limits." But the kids didn't run. Instead, they looked at each other and nodded. They had a job to finish. "We can handle a few more minutes," Ruby said, her voice steady despite the danger. "The cooling system's almost fixed. If we leave now, it'll all break down again." "Yeah," Jack agreed, still hanging from the pipes. "This isn't much worse than getting sunburned at the beach. We can do this." Tom was already back at the control panel, his fingers moving quickly over the symbols. "Almost got it. Just need to balance the energy flow, like tuning a guitar string." The chamber filled with more glowing plasma as another pipe cracked. But 3 kids from Earth, the planet that had tried to kill their species a million different ways, stood their ground. They had evolved to survive much worse than this. And somewhere in their DNA was the strength of countless ancestors who had faced impossible odds and found a way to win. They weren't about to give up now. The quantum core hummed with a soft, musical sound as Tom made the final adjustments. The glowing plasma that had filled the chamber was fading away, and the temperature was dropping fast. Ruby checked her readings one last time and smiled. "We did it," she announced through the comm system. "The cooling system is working perfectly now. Actually, it's working better than before." "Better?" Science Officer Green's voice was filled with disbelief. "How is that possible?" "We taught it to work smarter, not harder," Jack explained, climbing down from the pipes. "Like how we learned to play sports in the hot sun, you can't just power through it. You have to work with the heat, not against it." The 3 kids made their way back through the maintenance tunnels, their clothes covered in sweat and glowing quantum residue. But they were grinning like they'd just won a game, not saved a starship from destruction. When they emerged into the main lab, they found the alien crew staring at them with new eyes. The other Earth children rushed over to high-five their friends, while Mr. Brown looked both proud and relieved. "The quantum core's efficiency has increased by 30%. First Observer Blue announced, checking the ship's readings. "Your cooling solution is revolutionary, but the radiation exposure you endured—" "Oh, we're fine," Ruby said, pulling out her notebook. "Humans get radiation from the sun all the time. Our cells know how to handle it. Want to see how we fixed the cooling system?" I drew diagrams. The alien scientists gathered around as Ruby explained their solution. She used simple drawings and easy words, just like she did when helping younger kids with their homework. To everyone's surprise, the complex quantum mechanics made perfect sense when explained through Earth examples like sports, cooking, and playground games. Tom added his own notes about the quantum patterns. "See, when we stopped trying to control everything and just helped the systems work together naturally, it all got better. Like how our bacteria learned to help each other instead of fighting." First Observer Blue straightened to their full height and made a formal gesture of respect. "In all my years of space exploration, I have never been so wrong about a species. We thought your Earth was a horrible death world that produced only primitive, tough creatures. But now I see that its very harshness has given you extraordinary gifts. Your adaptability is not a weakness, but your greatest strength," Science Officer Green added. "Where we tried to solve problems with complex technology, you found simple solutions that worked better. Where we saw only danger, you saw opportunities to learn and grow." The ship's navigation systems were coming back online, its quantum systems working better than ever. Through the viewing windows, they could see stars shining clearly in space. They were no longer lost. "We're updating our database entry for Earth and humans," First Observer Blue announced. "No longer will it be labeled simply as a death world. Now it will be known as a crucible world, a place where the challenges of survival forge remarkable abilities. And we're adding a special note about Earth's children," Science Officer Green said with a gentle smile. "Their unique combination of physical resilience, adaptive thinking, and unshakable optimism makes them some of the most remarkable problem solvers in the galaxy. Jack grinned. Does this mean we get extra credit for our science project? Everyone laughed, the sound of human and alien voices mixing together in happy harmony. The ship's walls were glowing with healthy patterns now, all signs of the crisis gone. We should be back at Earth in 2 hours, First Observer Blue said. And we would like to offer something. Would your school be interested in a permanent student exchange program with our Science Academy? We have much to learn from each other. The Earth kids cheered, already excited about more space adventures. Mr. Brown smiled and nodded, knowing that this was just the beginning. As the ship turned toward home, Ruby made one last note in her book. Under a drawing of the quantum core, she wrote, "Sometimes the toughest places create the strongest people. And sometimes the best solutions are the simplest ones. You just have to be brave enough to try them." In the end, 12 kids from a death world had done more than save a starship. They had shown the galaxy that being different wasn't a weakness, and that the hardest paths often led to the greatest strengths. Not bad for a day's field trip.